We are looking good here. It has just turned at the top of the hour, so I'd like to introduce, well, you can see the names on the screen. We have Emma, Crystal, and James from the University College Dublin. If you are ready to go, you can take it away.
Thanks, Barry. Good afternoon or good morning, everyone, depending on where you are. So as Barry said, my name is James Matthews, and I'm working here with my colleagues, Associate Professor Emma O'Neill, Crystal Fulton, and yes, sorry, I just lost the screen sharing there.
It's going back on. I just realized I had to do something, James. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and we're here to present our project to you titled Designing for Learning in Bright Space, Promoting Metacognitive Skills in Students. So just want to talk a little bit about the background to this project firstly. So just moving to the next slide, just to let you all know, we were awarded a fellowship in teaching academic development from the university. And as part of that, we all had to come together to create a project addressing a broad aim of how the new VLE or learning management system could be leveraged to support the achievement of priority actions within our university's education strategy. And so within this, we focused on this transition to a new VLE from a pedagogical perspective. And to do this, if you move on to the next slide, we decided to focus on metacognition because it spoke to issues that all of us had experienced in our interactions with students. For example, a lack of critical thinking, an inability to link materials from different parts of modules. And then I suppose defining metacognition, so we drift back to the original definition by Flavel in 1979 of an awareness and understanding of one's own thought processes, and then breaking that down into the knowledge of cognition, sort of procedural, declarative and conditional knowledge, and then also the regulation of cognition, thinking about sort of planning, monitoring and regulating your own thoughts and your learning processes. So in terms of how metacognition actually then aligns with outcomes related to education, we know that there are meta-analysis that have demonstrated a strong link between self-regulated learning, metacognition, and academic achievement. We also know it's essential for critical thinking and also for lifelong learning. I think important and of importance for us in terms of being in a sort of a tertiary educational environment is the growing recognition of the links between sort of formative assessment, feedback, and other components linked to metacognition. And that's what we wanted to focus a little bit on within our project. So taking all that together, we had an overall aim for our project, which is really what are the effects of VLE integrated interventions on the development of metacognitive skills in students. And to answer that research question, we took forward 3 case studies, one in veterinary science, one in social science, and then also one in sports science. And we're going to speak to those 3 cases later on in the presentation. So I'm going to hand over to Emma now, who's going to talk you through some of the frameworks that we used.
Thanks very much, James. So our aim was really to produce a theory-driven learning intervention that would be designed to develop metacognitive skills in students, and we could trial in our 3 case studies. So we took on a review of the literature initially, and we're very heartened to find a website run by the Education Endowment, a charitable trust in the UK that specialise in evidence summaries and research on learning interventions in K-12 students. And they really put a lot of emphasis on metacognition because they found that it had compelling evidence as a high impact at relatively low cost. And they developed, using evidence assessment, they developed a framework of detailing 7 pillars to support teaching of metacognitive skills in K-12 students. And whilst that was developed for K-12, we felt it aligned very closely with models of metacognitive and self-regulated learning in tertiary or university environments. So we thought it lent itself very well. I'm going to go through the pillars in more detail when I just point out that we felt that 5 spoke more to what we wanted to achieve with our project, because 1 and 7 were aimed at the institution and upskilling the staff involved, and that really was out with what we were trying to achieve at this point. So if I go into more detail now just with the pillars, What they showed from evaluating the evidence was that you need to explicitly teach metacognitive strategies to students. So James alluded to as strategies of planning and monitoring and evaluating. You need to explain to students that they need to think about their learning, they need to activate their prior knowledge and try and link everything together using strategies. But you can't just tell them, go off and do this, I've told you about it. You've got to model that kind of thinking. And as a lecturer or a facilitator, you need to explain and verbalize your thought processes and scaffold tasks to help students learn how to do this. They can't do this if you don't give them something challenging. So you need to set an appropriate level of challenge and build that gradually so that they can gradually develop their skills. And all the time you need to be facilitating an environment where they can promote and develop metacognitive dialogue. So group and class discussion, it can't be done in a vacuum. They need to be working together and having a situation where there's peer and self-assessment opportunities. Finally, they really hammered home that you need to explicitly teach students this. You need to show that you have this expectation of them and scaffold learning tasks that build towards them taking ownership of their own learning and give them ways of checking in on this process as they go with quizzes or feedback and checklists. So that was all very well. This was how we wanted to weave these pillars through our learning intervention, but we had to design what we were doing with our modules. And we wanted a way of translating this explicitly across our module design. I'd worked with learning design frameworks, first designed by Oliver, who designed these really for online learning because he felt that a lot of the time material lands online without really a map or any sort of way of students navigating their way around. So he felt that putting student activity central was really key, and then providing them with information that showed them where supports and resources were available by way of mapping it and making it explicit was a way of helping students navigate their way around. So we adapted this, and this, I'm going to just show you an overview of the module design we developed, and you'll hopefully recognize some of the metacognitive pillars as we go through. So central to what we were doing or what we wanted to achieve was student activity, because this is key to them being involved in taking ownership of their learning. So they had a complex project with group work central to this. We expected them to reflect on their learning and taught them how to do this and scaffolded that and gave them self-assessment opportunities. And all the time they're interacting with peers. In terms of the resources that they had available to them, we taught them about metacognition and introduced the concepts and brought all of that to the fore, linking it to their prior learning. But we also modeled metacognitive thinking in class discussions and made that core. We gave them quizzes and checklists that let them check in and navigate where they were heading and how they were progressing. And again, with learning supports, we wanted to give them a yardstick as to a really clear flag where they were heading in terms of rubrics and exemplars, but then checkpoints with formative feedback and group dialogue and scaffolded tasks that increase in complexity to let them really gauge where they were heading. So we're really encouraging them to take ownership and step up. So if I revisit those metacognitive pillars, this is very busy, but I've just taken you through that gradually in terms of our case study structure. Really what I want you to take out of this is there's lots of colour everywhere, which means that we've got each of those 5 pillars represented in activities across the module structure. So that's all very well now. I've told you how we designed this, but we're talking about Brightspace and how we integrated this into the VLE or the LMS. And what we're aware of is that this offers us a unique opportunity to really model and mold what students are doing in their outside class time. Normally, if you don't use your online environment, you can only influence them when you're actually with them. What you can do with the LMS is actually influence their learning more of the time. So we mapped this journey using appropriate Brightspace tools, and I don't have time to go into a lot of detail, but what I want to show you is we feel that this has student-facing components in terms of the blue at the top and staff-facing components in terms of the red at the bottom. It's important that everything is signposted and structured for students with the endpoint for them exactly what the expectations are highlighted to them, and that you generate engaging materials that aren't overwhelming and gradually release. From the staff point of view, you need to think about conditional release and breaking topics down so that it's really well thought out. And these are the sort of tools that we were using. So we used announcements, we used checklists, we used templates and rubrics to really let students know where they were heading. We used quizzes with feedback. From a staff perspective, we could personalize things and make it achievable with large numbers of students by using replace strings, release conditions, intelligent agents to gradually release material. And we also use peer feedback and audio and visual feedback as mechanisms of really engaging with the students and making them feel that we were doing things with them. So just a very quick flavour of what it looks like. We tried to personalise things. Everything was very structured. They had the Oliver structure to know where they were going. They had information about the lectures or the information they had so that they could relate it to what they'd done. They knew what their learning outcomes were. They had clear assessment guidelines and they had clear rubrics. So everything was scaffolded and signposted to really give them the opportunity to step up and take things on. So I'll hand back to James now.
Very briefly, just to talk you through the 3 case studies. As you can see, we had one in veterinary clinical neurology, which Emma has shown you some examples of. We had one around psychology of sport and health and one in social sciences. Across these 3 case studies, we had 221 students enrolled in these modules, 114 enrolled in the study, and then 77 students completed our pre and post survey, and another 26 took part in focus groups across the 3 case studies. So we had a very good representation across the 3 areas. In terms of the measures that we use a survey called the Metacognitive Awareness Inventory, and also scale looking at self-efficacy for learning. And then we followed that up with student focus groups, as I've mentioned, some open-ended questions, and an analysis of critical self-reflections as well, which we won't be reporting today. So just to look at some of the key findings from a quantitative perspective. So really encouragingly, looking at our survey results around metacognition, we found an increase, statistically significant increase in terms of metacognitive knowledge across our interventions, both procedural, declarative and conditional knowledge. And then also looking at the regulation of metacognition, those skills, planning, monitoring and evaluating, we saw a statistically significant effect there. And both of these effects were of medium effect size, showing a good strength in relationship. And then alongside increasing those skills, our students were also more confident after interventions in terms of their learning process. And again, there was a medium effect size reported there. So I suppose to reinforce these findings, we had a qualitative piece of research as well, and very encouragingly our findings converged nicely with that. I'm handing over to Crystal now to talk through that element.
Unmute. Thanks, James. The quantitative data parallel what students told us about the impact they felt on their learning. Importantly, students understood they could approach learning differently. They valued new strategies for learning. Students also valued tools such as checklists and reflection that helped them learn and understand they had learned. As one student noted, I think I'm in a better position to take on future assessments and other modules. Additionally, using reflection, students saw themselves connecting the dots between their past approaches to learning with what they were learning now and how they plan to use that learning in future. In the next slide, we see the importance of structure and wayfinding to students. This is an ongoing conversation in the university brought to the fore by the COVID pandemic as instructors and students suddenly found themselves online. Students told us that they wanted information that was clearly organized for easy retrieval and use. They valued our interactive, structured use of Brightspace over the use of the LMS as simply a repository for files. As one student said, in other modules, some lecturers just put up so much material and you cannot find it. You're clicking into learning materials for ages. The more stuff that there is on Brightspace, the more confused I get, and the less likely I am to interact with the materials that are there. Students particularly liked Brightspace's checklists, which helped them stay on course for completing learning tasks. They told us how they would like to have similar checklists in other modules and how they went ahead and made checklists, lists of their own to help them with their learning on other modules. And in the next slide, we employed multiple means of feedback in our interventions, including instructor feedback in text and audio formats, as well as automatic feedback through quizzes and assessment feedback using a reflective rubric across our modules. Students valued clear goals and feedback expressed through tools and tasks for formative and summative assessment. For example, formative quizzes throughout a module afforded the students the opportunity to test themselves and to gauge their learning progress via immediate quiz feedback. Group work also helps students talk through ideas together, helping them to build confidence in their learning. The reflective rubric provided students with guidance as they prepared assessment and helped them consider their learning progress. As one student noted, rubrics are really, really handy because you got to learn a bit more, like you knew a bit more of what was actually being asked for. A lot of other modules, you just get given the title and you have to go off and figure it out yourself, but the rubrics gave you a bit more guidance. Critically, students felt grounded. As one student stated, rather than just guessing kind of what you're meant to do, that took away the uncertainty. It was really clear. And I felt like I actually knew exactly what was expected from us from the module, and from the feedback, knew what I needed to do as well. And the next slide, continuing with feedback, peer feedback offered students social connection, so important during the pandemic, and a chance for deeper examination of their learning through understanding the learning of others. As one student summed up, peer assessment was a valuable feature in each assignment as it created a sort of social connection between myself and fellow students. Another student noted the important role of video peer feedback in their learning. I found the feedback I received from other students to be helpful as it informed me on how to improve each of my critical learning analyses. In the future, I will continue to ask for feedback from my peers. This is to help me improve my future assessments in modules. So in summary, on the next slide, we note that it is possible to have that important impact on student learning and their development of metacognitive skills. We believe we have a valuable framework to aid the transitioning of face-to-face modules to a blended or online environment, which emphasizes the promotion of metacognitive skills and student engagement. Next slide, please, Emma. Thank you for attending our talk today. We'd like to take a moment to thank the many people who have helped us with this project, including the incredible support and knowledge of Chris Sessoms, Darcy White, and Sophie McGowan from D2L. Additionally, we thank the many people across our university who have generously volunteered their time to help us. And most importantly, we thank our students, without whom this project would not be possible. And our final slide, this is the end of our presentation, and we welcome any questions you might have. Thank you.
Well, I see that Karen just posted a question and wanting to know if your research is available to review. I assume she means available on the web.
We've done a few presentations so far of our work. We're now working on a publication, so a formal publication, so we hope that that will be available in due course. I'm not sure if Emma and James want to add to that.
We're also hoping to put together a video case study, and we're working in collaboration with D2L on the video case study. So we hope that that will be widely available as well. But formal publication is what we're working on first.
So we have a couple minutes, so we can wait to see if more questions come in, and we did get one. So I'll hold my own question for now. Susan is asking, she said she'd like to know more about how you modeled the metacognitive skills.
I can take that, Susan. I guess I was responsible for teaching in the veterinary clinical neurology module. So I worked through with the students worked on case studies. So real live animal cases, I guess kept online examples and videos that gradually released for the students. So when they worked with the staff, they got a chance to hear us model how we'd approach these cases, model how we'd think about our approach to the cases, so that they can learn the thought processes involved there. So I think that that helped them. So that aspect was.
Well, Emma kind of froze on us there. Still not back. Uh-oh. So, Crystal, while we're waiting here, Matt was wondering if you could put the contact info back up. Just share that. I guess that
Oh.
was Emma, right? Emma was sharing the slide.
Yeah.
And we've lost her.
Okay.
Maybe
I will,
any contact info could go in the chat window.
I'll
Would
put
that-
it in the chat window for
that
you.
work?
Two
Okay.
ticks.
Okay. And so we've had a couple of comments about the case study, and people are anxiously awaiting that. So in the Q&A pod, you also have a question of whether you accept requests to present this work to faculty groups or centers of teaching and learning. So I'm not quite sure who this is. Initial A, Nooks. And so would we encourage that person to contact you via email?
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely.
By
Okay.
email, yeah.
Good,
I
good,
put
good.
all the details up in the chat box there. So
All right,
that's
and the Academic Fellows is your handle on Twitter as well. All right. So we still have another minute or two, and you had your slide near the end, and you thanked 3 people who I know at D2L. But I'm not asking this question because I want you to talk more about D2L, but I'm seriously curious about the types of work they did to assist you in this.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to say something, James?
Yeah, sure, Barry. So I think Chris, Darcy, and Sophie were very helpful from a couple of perspectives. One was at the starting phase of the project to try and understand how we could use the particular Brightspace tools to map to that sort of framework around metacognition, which tools in Brightspace might be most appropriate for some of the things we were trying to develop with our students. I think secondly, sort of at a later phase now, they're helping us to sort of shape our video case study in terms of giving some guidance as to how best to promote sort of some of our design pieces in terms of presenting that in the case study. So really some really good advice at the start in terms of designing, and then I suppose later on in terms of how to disseminate effectively in terms of the video case study.
Great, thank you very much. I don't think we've missed any questions that are in there. We do have a minute or two to transition. First of all, Emma's back. Hello, Emma, we missed you.
Sorry, Emma, we lost
Sorry
you.
about that. My computer has just died. My desktop just completely gave up and is saying broken computer.
Tell the boss you need a new one.
Yeah.
Get yourself a new one, right?
So I was talking about modeling metacognitive skills. I guess just to finish what I was saying was that I was modeling the approach with the cases, but all the time actually modeling the thought processes in terms of reflection, and staff were trying to show that they thought about their approach to learning. So both directly how you manage the cases, but also how you reflect on your own learning and how you use that skill yourself.
Great, thanks. So we have just another minute to see. I'm going to give away some more prizes here. So if anybody wants to be ready in the chat, I'm going to post another link before we turn things over to Ellen and Aaron in about 60 seconds. And in fact, if Aaron, I think you're the one, right? If you're going to, you could go ahead and start your screen sharing now if you want to. So here comes the trivia question for our attendees to waste a little time while we get ready to go here. I hope it's not wasted. Kind of a funny little question, something I didn't know until I ran across it. So before we turn it over to Aaron and Ellen, let's thank Crystal and James and Emma, all from University College of Dublin. Really great presentation and great research. Thank you very much. And one of you should unmute and give the last words to for your group on audience there. Whoever's first. There's Crystal.
Sure. Thanks ever so much to everybody for coming and hearing our presentation today. We are totally happy to talk to you and to share information with you and to come and meet with you virtually at the moment. And absolutely, we are just so excited about this research, and we are looking forward to doing so much more with it in the future. So thanks ever so much.
All right, thanks to all 3 of you. And that means we are ready to go. So Ellen Buck, Aaron Burrell, if you are ready, we are ready for you, and you can take it away.
Thank you, Barry. So thank you for having us here this afternoon to talk to you. I'm Ellen Buck. Obviously, I'm not Aaron. And Aaron can introduce himself later. But we are here to talk to you about how we're trying to place Brightspace at the heart of our learning and teaching experience at the University of Suffolk. So in this session, I'm going to introduce you to the university. We're a new university, and that may be of a little interest to you. Some of the key points of what we're trying to achieve in our work at the moment, which has been exacerbated and perhaps highlighted through the pandemic at the moment. Introduce you to some of the key concepts and projects that we've highlighted for the year and the months ahead. Aaron will talk to you a little bit about the COVID catalyst and what I like to call the gift of COVID. We have to find a silver lining in there somewhere. Leading change and some take-home lessons for you. So the university, University of Suffolk, as it says there, we're a transformational university. We were granted full university status and taught degree awarding powers in 2016, so we're very new as a higher education institution. We've got 4 schools at the moment, and we're teaching courses from foundation at level 3 right through to postgraduate research. But we're also a widening participation university, and that applies to many universities across the country now. But we are rated second in the country as a widening participation university, and many of our students are actually coming from our immediate local area. Suffolk is a rural county, for those of you who know it, in the east of England, and we typically have very low participation rates, and that's why we were founded initially, to try and tackle some of those issues. But as a university, we're rapidly growing our community through partnership, through our international strategy and through transnational education. So while we're looking to make a distinctive, thriving academic community in Suffolk, we're looking to extend beyond the walls of our institution in Suffolk and impact and change lives globally. So to do that, we're kind of using some of the tools that are available to us through our access and participation strategy. And for those of us who have access and participation strategies as part of our OFS registration, that's really a whole student life cycle look. And when we look at our data and our student body at the university, we can see that we have challenges with retention. Complex lives matter, and they have certainly been exacerbated by COVID. And we've also got issues around things like digital poverty, which impact online learning and engagement with learning through blended learning as well. There are also issues for us in progression, and progression means in APP language, students progressing into higher level study or graduate level careers. And that's a challenge for us in Suffolk because we don't necessarily have a local economy that's paying high level wages. And that is giving graduate jobs available for our students. And when most of our students are coming from the local area, they can't move their families. So we've got to find ways of responding to a world that is increasingly global, increasingly seamless boundaries between countries, between businesses, between knowledge communities, and make sure that our students are able to participate in those fully. So moving on, we have a learning and teaching strategy, and that's quite small print. Some of you may be able to read it, but our strategy is progressive, and we're looking at learning from level 4, where our students may be mature students returning to learning, or they may also be students coming straight in from school. But what we find is there are quite often issues with confidence. We've got higher levels of disclosure around mental health and learning difficulties. And so our level 4 study is very much focused on guided learning. And then as students progress through their second year with us and through to their final year, we're looking at developing their skills so that they're ready to go out into the workplace, looking at employability and enterprise, and making sure that they're fully independent learners and know how to signpost and find their learning for themselves as they move on. So in terms of our key projects this year, we're looking at things that are maximising our opportunities for recruitment across our global communities now, and also our strategies for retention. We're looking at how we can then develop and grow our online programmes to reach communities beyond Suffolk. And that means that we're having to upskill our online educators, and our academics are perhaps less well versed in some of the IT and the digital skills that some of our students are now expecting from them. So we've got a number of projects that Aaron will talk you through. And this is really how we're looking to place Brightspace at the heart of all of our activity, from access through to continuation and success and through to progression. So hand over to you, Aaron.
Thank you, Ellen. So really, just before we sort of get into the projects, I just want to give sort of a bit of scene setting around Brightspace and how we transitioned from a previous learning management system that had become the excuse and the reason why academics weren't doing certain things with their students in terms of the use of the available tools. We went through a bit of a design and procurement process, which we, as from learning and teaching side, were very keen to ensure that it wasn't just about cost, it was actually about usability, the tool set. So we had a really great project team put together, panel presentations, we had student representation on, we had academic representation, professional services, etc. And Brightspace, so D2L came in, and Brightspace immediately kind of stood out to us as an environment that we'd like to look more into, and it won the procurement process on every category that we were checking against. And really, just to show this graphic, just to show you how it kind of is now the heart of our educational sort of technology ecosystem. And that isn't just myself as the head of learning information and environments who's talking like that. We had a meeting recently, last week or so, with our Deputy Vice Chancellor, who was talking to a new student experience team that we've brought together for this academic year. And he was sitting there actually saying that Brightspace is the heart of what we're doing, and it is driving, and it's the enabler that's allowing us to really move forward in terms of pedagogy as well as actual improvements of usability in systems. So I really just wanted a quick scene setting there in terms of where Brightspace sits. And it is, as I say, it is the heart of our ecosystem. So project one and the concept around recruitment and retention, as Ellen mentioned, kind of to allow us to understand the lived experiences, which has become critical to success in achieving our aspirations. As Ellen mentions, we're a community kind of focused widening participation university. So it's very key to us to see students coming in who may be more than likely the first members of their family coming to university, and it's to give us an understanding of actually how they feel. And we understand that there's a lot of anxieties about kind of making that jump to higher education, certainly if there's not a lot of kind of experience or support within the family of that experience. So we're very keen to make sort of applicants feel as kind of as comfortable as possible. So what we've been doing is working with across our academic schools, across our marketing and external relations team, who also have colleagues out and about in schools to get that understanding, and working with our students union, we've put together a number of taster courses. And just so this is kind of the life cycle around these taster courses. So the idea is that obviously we promote our courses, our degrees, our foundation degrees, our apprenticeships. They go out through social media, they're on the website, we have people in schools talking at those schools. We run a number of open days, and the idea is to try and get people used to the experience of university and what it's like, how it differs from previous kind of experiences in schools. We also have quite a high percentage of mature learners, and when I say mature learners, they're not just 21 and over. We have quite a higher age range in some of our mature learners who are coming back to education. So the idea is we get them in, we get an understanding of this is a taster course, this is the subject might be of interest. Then you'll see in that life cycle that can flow in and out of the open days to an applicant. We can then offer a more closed, tightly knit taster course that will spend more time with the academics. And then when we have an offer made, so we're looking at firm offers, we then introduce them to our induction module, which I'll come on to later. But just to kind of have a little look into that taster course, this is the idea we're looking at. So we have an introduction to the course team, we have an introduction to the taster, we do a little bit of diagnostic testing to see where those applicants might be in terms of the subject matter. We then do a lot of work around, which we've termed there as VOP presentations, so voice over PowerPoint type presentations. These are all kind of online remote delivery. So we're looking at a very short kind of styled lecture where an academic is talking over some of their slides. We then have a stimulus activity, so we get them doing something. A term I've always quite liked to use is information light, action heavy. So to keep users engaged online, it's about getting them active and doing things. So we'll have a stimulus activity there. We then have a reflective activity, bring them back into another presentation, and then follow up with another diagnostic test, see where we've had any progress in terms of the subject matter. We'll have an exit video from the course team thanking the participation, and then we're looking at digital credentialing in terms of badges and certificates, etc. So that's the idea, what makes up a taster course. And this is kind of like the timings of it. We're only looking really at an hour's learning. So we found, we did a really nice taster course around special educational needs and disabilities course that we run here, degree, and we've had some incredible feedback from that, and that was based around this kind of hours chunk of learning. So it's just to give them a flavour of what's available, and then once the applicant, the learner comes in, we can then look at doing more online open days and more sessions with them. But that's the idea of the open taster course, and getting people having a bit of a flavour of what's happening. So just in terms in the wider life cycles, obviously that taster course sits on the left of this life cycle. Then we have the open days, which we're now obviously having been in a kind of lockdown for a number of months, and now we're still kind of in our, certainly in the UK and England, in the terms of the tiered system that we're in, not being able to do the face-to-face sessions is allowing us to still use the online synchronous tools that we use. So we do live, real-time virtual open day sessions, again inviting those learners back in. And then, as I mentioned earlier about the induction, we've moved our induction online. Last year we did a full kind of 800-900 students at a time in the local theatre. Great idea to bring students in together, get them feeling that sense of community. Obviously, again, in this situation, we're unable to do that now. So we've created a fully kind of blended idea around an induction, full instructionally designed content. So we get the applicants in early. We have an extended induction, lots of content in there. So welcome to the university, what it means to be at university, the things that they can come across, the different departments that are available. We had a really nice section of content around preparing to study. We normally do a face-to-face get ahead where we bring applicants in for a couple of days. We've moved that online, so it's around academic and study skills. And we had a progressive release of that content. So you, again, using the Brightspace tools, we were able to progressively release content week on week on week. And we supported that with live synchronous sessions again. And we found that the engagement with the induction module has been huge compared to our face-to-face sessions that we used to run. So that is one thing that we'll, again, from this, we'll continue to look at, is how we develop that induction area. And then the next stage is to coming into the university, and something we'll mention in a bit, our block and blend kind of pedagogical model for undergraduate and moving to postgraduate. And then we also are looking at offering the CPD. So we're using one of the Brightspace tools around the course merchant to bring in external users into our Brightspace platform and to use that. So that's a look at the life cycle. Just some very quick numbers around our induction module. We didn't bring all of our new students in, so depending on some of our partnerships, but we had a core 1,500 learners in the induction module, and you'll start seeing there in terms of content, where we had over 167,000 accesses of that content. We are incredibly pleased with the numbers we're getting out of that induction module, and a lot of the content has been built and designed around the instructionally designed materials that we've previously run a project on, which has led us to get a better understanding of that online and blended approach. So I really just wanted to give you an idea of some of those numbers there. So just kind of moving on to our second concept and project, and this is around a course design blueprint. So we did, as a university, some work with Advanced HE, which is it was the higher education academy in the UK, and we were looking at how we can actually develop kind of leading transformation in learning and teaching. And we developed a new blueprint for our course design. And this on screen is the top level. It was based around a lotus leaf design, and each of the squares represents a petal. So ethos, values, content, delivery, etc., etc. all break down. And under there's another 8 squares. And the idea of the blueprint is we work with our course teams to look at validation of new courses or revalidation of old courses. And the idea is that they can design their course based on this blueprint. And that's been a huge development around So it's the development of new courses. And here's just a quick glimpse of some of that content. So on the left, we're actually looking at how we can use kind of rubrics in terms of self-assessment for a course team to look at their course and design and actually say, where do I fit on this rubric? So we're looking from the right, incomplete, so they don't match our standards, to the far left, which is exemplary. And we are looking at the accomplished to be our baseline standard for course design. And on the right is just showing you some of the content. We've built some interactive support and guidance, actually breaking down what those petals mean and how course teams can associate with them. And then very quickly, moving on to our third project and concept, which is the DigiPath, so it's professional development for our academics. And we've, over the very early, so late spring, early summer, we've developed 2 out of 7 DigiPath ways at the moment. And first being Brightspace and looking actually online which we term an online learning environment and the use of those tools. And then the second module is about developing learning and teaching and looking at different pedagogical ideas and how some of those theories can be used. We've had huge engagement with the DigiPath training. We can really see from last academic year to this academic year that the actual development of materials in Brightspace have really moved away from being a repository where PowerPoint or Word files might have been uploaded to now where we have actually instructionally designed content. So our academics are building out using templates in Brightspace, so HTML pages, no longer using file uploads. They're designing and building a narrative to sell the story of the module that they're in and the units and topics of content. So we've seen a huge uptake in the standards that we've set, and it has been hugely encouraging. This is just a few screenshots, tiny, so apologies for that. Just looking at some of the DigiPath content. And the idea is the DigiPath content is built on our standards. So as our academics are moving through the content, they're actually seeing in practice what we're suggesting they should be doing. So they're using a lot of signposting, so descriptions on folders and topics and units of content. We're using our template. So the middle one is just showing a module, learning out objectives for the module, what you'll learn. And on the right is some of the, just an idea of some of the embedding of the content and the templates that we are using. This is just show you very quickly, it's very tiny. It's one of an audit we did of our modules. So wherever you see more green and yellow appearing, that's the change in the academic year. So everything red above was incomplete, so didn't meet our standards. Following academics doing our DigiPath training over the summer, you'll start to see where lots of green and yellow are coming in now, where they're promising and they are accomplished, so they are meeting our standards. So we can very quickly, we can just see from a quick audit actually that there has been a significant change in the design of the materials in our Brightspace areas. Then just moving on to our COVID catalyst, as the institution is moving forward with a block delivery. So this year we've done a block delivery, we're moving to a block pedagogy. So the course design blueprint is looking at how we move forward the design of courses to a block rather than the traditional semester and terms. We're following in the footsteps of other universities around the world who have seen huge improvement in student experience through the use of block. And then active blended learning, we've become much more, our academics are much more used to following the DigiPath training, and they're now creating active blended learning content. We've been enabled to use a high flex model in terms of synchronous delivery. So we are actually having lecture capture streaming. So remote users who are self-isolating, who are not on campus, can still participate in the same sessions. We have developed a lot of learning communities, a lot of work around communities of learning and the idea of sense of belonging. And we have been doing a lot of work around embedding a lot of mental health in our modules. And then lastly on there is just, we've also run a session, developed some nice content around how to learn online for the new learners in this current climate. And then very quickly, just to go through the data. So the line in the chart is looking at our academic 1920, and the bars are 2021. So this is looking at content engagement, and you'll see from this academic year with a huge uptick in the content that is being accessed and then accessed and developed from the courses. We're looking at announcements, and you'll see the large March 20s when we went into lockdown, lots of use of the announcements tool, and then a gradual increase still over last academic year. Quizzes, huge amount of work being done in quizzes and moving away from some assessments into a much more the time constraint assessment using the quizzes tool. Activity feed, we hadn't launched until we went into lockdown, and that was a tool that we pushed through early in our roadmap. Use of the virtual classroom, so the Bongo virtual classroom for our streaming. Again, as you'll see, this last couple of months, nearly 2,000 sessions being run each month. And then just a general look at all of our tools there, and you'll see, again, towards this academic year, a vast improvement across the use of Brightspace. And that's back to Ellen.
Thanks, Aaron. And so hopefully we've done what we said we were going to do when we started the presentation. And the key messages for us in this and for our colleagues across the University of Suffolk and our partners is that really our community can and does extend beyond institutional walls, and Brightspace is enabling us to do that. We're also trying to help our colleagues understand that learning and engagement with learning isn't just focused on what's happening in the curriculum and what's happening in the classroom. It's really enabling us to reshape those conversations and bring in extracurricular and co-curricular learning that's happening beyond the physical campus at Ipswich. The student life cycle and our understanding of life cycle, from access to recruitment through to success and continuation and progression, has really enabled us to place Brightspace at the heart of the ecosystem. It's driving everything we do, and it's interesting to bring other colleagues from other professional services departments and of course our academic teams into that conversation. We're still challenged very much by the digital divide, and that's in terms of skills and poverty. We have a number of students who don't have access to their own equipment at home, or they have one piece of equipment that's trying to support an entire family and school in terms of their business. And so we're trying to work out how to challenge that, how to resolve it, but also how to counter the idea that if students disappear when you move into online learning, it's not because they're not engaging with online learning, it's because they can't engage with online learning because they don't have the tools there to do so. And what's really important to us for all of this, and the course design blueprint is helping us do this, is the sharing of ideas and experiences. We're gathering concrete evidence from across our community, and we're giving opportunity for others to come together and share and reflect. And I think the work that we've done with Block and Blend has also helped us to reach out to our international community as well, and certainly extend our thanks to University of Victoria and Melbourne for their support in helping us get that moving. So there we go. Thank you. Any
All right,
questions?
so yeah, you know, we are out of time, but I'll give one question from Linda here. Maybe we can have a quick answer on how did you reach out to people to entice them to the taster course?
So the taster courses are promoted by our marketing and recruitment team, our external relations team. So when they're working with local schools, they're talking to partners, then they're sharing those links, and that's how we're getting those out there and through social media. And as we find that people come and engage with the open days, they're then going back to those afterwards, so they can kind of revisit and regroup. And it's a bit like using lecture capture for students to be able to revisit and regroup after the lesson. We're finding they're being used in the same way.
Okay, and we are going to be closing out here shortly, but if you can jump back quickly to your first slide, Jacqueline would love to have your contact info. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so just a quick heads up for the audience. We are taking a break at the top of the next hour. So about 13 minutes from now, we will be back with another session in the instruction and design track. There's the contact info for Aaron and Ellen. And I'm sure you can find more info if you need it than that, and if you need to get in touch. So I'm going to thank the two of you for sharing your expertise with us today. I will give you the last word and then we'll close it out.
I have nothing further to add, I don't think, other than what we've just talked through at pace, Barry. So thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to share our experiences.
All right, thanks everybody. Hope to see you soon in another session.